Before we begin, I request that for the next 5 minutes or so, I would like you to suspend your reality and assume that I am a person who knows about fishing, because this video is just one big fishing analogy. Thank you and enjoy. Admit it, we've all seen the pictures on Instagram of the dudes being bros, and gals, we don't generalize, that went fishing and made a good catch. We've also heard the stories following these trips, and something so wild is that somehow the fish in the story becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. What once was a 13-inch bass now resembles something of a great white shark. Well, I may be exaggerating, but so were they, so you get the picture. This video is meant to ask the following questions. How much of memory and storytelling is confidence, and how much is honest mistake? Are we so willing to impress others and seem bigger than we are that we sacrifice truth for entertainment? First, it's important to recognize that memory in itself is nuanced and complicated. Our minds are composed of, as Daniel Kahneman puts it, two selves. In his words, paraphrased, we might be thinking of ourselves and of other people in terms of two selves. There's an experiencing self who lives in the present and knows the present, is capable of reliving the past, but basically it has only the present. Sort of like a doctor asking, does it hurt now when I touch you here? And then there is a remembering self, and the remembering self is the one that keeps score and maintains the story of our life, as is when a doctor asks, how have you been feeling lately? Or something like that. The experiencing self and the remembering self are two very different entities. So after you've been out fishing for a while, you catch a pretty good fish. Hey, that's so cool. Awesome job, one of your friends might say. You take some pictures and maybe one of your friends catches an even bigger fish, let's say a pike, and that's really cool. Suddenly you find yourself happy for them because fish, right? It was a good day. Now, as we talked about before, the remembering self, as Kahneman puts it, is a storyteller. And what defines a story are changes, significant moments, and endings. Endings are very, very important. So it's the next week and you're talking to your buddies in school about your weekend and about the fishing trip. You get all excited and caught up in the story, and you may say the fish was a little bit bigger than it actually was. Now imagine telling this story over and over again, and who's to say that after a certain point, you weren't the one who caught the biggest fish that day? Because we've talked about it around 5 trillion times in class, for this example, I thought we would cover the news story that surfaced a few years ago in 2013 surrounding Brian Williams in what he described as, quote, a close call in the skies over Iraq.
Colleague Brian Williams is back in Kuwait City tonight after a close call in the skies over Iraq. Brian, tell us about what you got yourself into.
The way in, we currently are not under fire. I say again, not under fire, but we look for some type of security. Over.
We quickly make our drop and then turn southwest. Suddenly, without knowing why, we learn we've been ordered to land in the desert. On the ground, we learned the Chinook ahead of us was almost blown out of the sky. That hole was made by a rocket-propelled grenade, or RPG.
We were in some helicopters. What we didn't know was we were north of the invasion. We were the northernmost Americans in Iraq. We were going to drop some bridge portions across the Euphrates so the 3rd Infantry could cross on them. 2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47.
Over a decade later, Williams claims he was unaware that this was a false memory. It actually happened to a different soldier in the plane ahead of him, whose story he later shared with Williams and also posted on Facebook.
On this broadcast last week, in an effort to honor and thank a veteran who protected me and so many others after a ground fire incident in the desert during the Iraq War invasion, I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago. This was a bungled attempt by me to thank one special veteran and, by extension, our brave military men and women, veterans everywhere, those who have served while I did not, I hope they know they have my greatest respect and also now my apology.
After the whole incident and following his filmed apology, Williams also took to Facebook, quote, "I think the constant viewing of the video showing us inspecting the impact area and the fog of memory over 12 years made me conflate the two, and I apologize." Williams said that he had no desire to fictionalize or dramatize his experience, so why did he? In his podcast Revisionist History episode called Free Brian Williams, Malcolm Gladwell tries to explain these lapses in memory. In the words of Gladwell, every time we retrieve a memory, in other words, there's a chance it can get contaminated. We hear some new details somewhere about the event, and without realizing, we just add it in. Memory researchers talk a lot about what they call time slice errors. A couple of things happen in the same general time frame, and we get the sequence all jumbled up. To sum up all of this, as we saw with Brian Williams, the more you tell a story, the more confident you become with it. And the more confident you are, the more certain you are that what you think happened actually happened. Whether or not you know it, memory is an act of recreation. Time changes memories because each time you recall a memory, you are simply recalling the last time you talked about it. Such intensely embarrassing stories like Williams show that changing a story from very shortly after it happened, for whatever reason, turns into a permanently distorted memory. And as we've learned, a distorted memory makes for a distorted reality. Whether we're talking about fishing trips or Brian Williams' major on-screen faux pas, both exemplify the statement that when remembering, we don't choose between experiences, we choose between memories of experiences. So if you try and recall a memory that seems a little fishy, don't start floundering and making stuff up. And when listening to a story that sounds a little troutrageous, always check that it's official. Thank you.
You catch a pretty good fish.
Right here.
Hey,
Hey, that's so awesome. Oh, fuck me, the asshole.